Hey, She Ace That listeners, find us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Every subscribe, like, and follow goes a long way, and I can't thank you all enough for your support. And with that, let's get into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to She Ace That. It's your host, Alyxandra, and today we have my absolute dream guest who's made major waves in collegiate athletics and will continue to. She's a former Michigan State setter who finished her Spartan career with over 3,000 assists, 3,040 to be exact, ranking her 6th all-time in MSU history. She's appeared in 133 career matches, which ranks 8th all-time at Michigan State, and her 473 career sets ranks 4th in program history. As a multi-year team captain, she led the Spartans to back-to-back NCAA Sweet 16 appearances in 2012 and 2013, while earning her Casita Academic All-America honors and being named a 3-time Big Ten Distinguished Scholar. After an impressive playing career, she spent nearly a decade developing championship programs across the Big Ten as an assistant and associate head coach. She's earned a reputation as one of the brightest tactical minds in volleyball, particularly in developing elite setters and building winning cultures. And now she's come home to build something special as the newest head coach of Michigan State University's NCAA Division I volleyball program, returning to the place where her legacy began. The woman who's about to take Michigan State volleyball to even bigger heights. Welcome to She Aced That, Coach Kelsay.
Oh my gosh, Alexandra, I have goosebumps. Like literally. Wow, that was quite the introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm fired up to be here.
Thank you for being here. And I know we were just talking about this a little before we started, but it's amazing because I remember going to matches with my high school teams and watching you and Corey on the court, and you two always stood out to me more than anyone. And little did I know, looking back then, that 13 years later, I could be sitting here talking to you after all of your additional accomplishments and mine, and it's just a dream. So
Thank you for that. It's pretty cool. Corey was here this weekend for the Hall of Fame induction, and we were able to be back on Saturday. She had breakfast with our team on Sunday, popped into a couple of passing drills to relive the glory days, and it felt like no time has passed. So it was pretty special.
You're 7-0 to start your Michigan State volleyball head coaching journey. And before we talk about the present, I do kind of want to go back to your Spartan days, given that we're both MSU alumni. And I'm a little biased, but there's always something special about being a Spartan. Does it feel different coaching at your alma mater versus other Big Ten schools, and especially 7 wins in?
Yeah, I think, I say this a lot is like Michigan State never left me. Like I left East Lansing, but East Lansing never left me. And so to be back home is really like a full circle dream come true. And while I've only ever coached in the Big Ten, it made it difficult, to wear my green and white on other college campuses. It was always like a piece of my heart was still here in East Lansing. And so to be back home and to be leading this program as the head coach that I love with my whole heart, is really such a privilege and something that even on the hard days, I recognize that this is a really beautiful part of chapter in my life. And I'm really grateful to be here, having the privilege to lead these women.
Specific to Michigan State, I do have to ask what your favorite dorm food was when you went there. And
Oh,
are there any food places that you still have to go to till this day in East Lansing?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. So our athletes now live in 1855, which is beautiful. They have their
Oh,
own kitchens and they
yep.
stay there like their whole career. I'm like, guys, you have to live in a dirty college house like one summer, like you just have to do
You
it.
do.
I lived in Wonders like before they redid Case was my freshman year. So like we used to go like Sni-Fi was like the good dorm, like at Brody or Snyder Phillips. And we used to go to Snyder Phillips a lot. Um, and then we lived off campus, I think one thing Corey and I were lamenting this weekend is we were here when Conrad's was on the corner, right where Noodles and Company was.
Hmm.
And we were always joking like that was the spot. And now our kids like don't even know what
I
that is.
know.
Like it still exists, but it's not like it was like Conrad's or Mena's. And so it's fun. It's fun to see the way East Lansing has evolved, right? How beautiful downtown is, all the new restaurants, the Graduate, but then there's still some staples there that have been there such a long time. And it's cool that that's how I feel. I feel like there's, part 6 years of my life that I left that I like grew and developed and I'm different, but yet there's still a big piece of me that's like the same Kristen as when I played here. So it's kind of the same, with the college town and how it's evolved and yet your favorite moments are oftentimes still there.
Especially even like the same going out spots, maybe celebrating after wins. Like, did you have a special place that you guys would go after winning your
You
matches?
know, it was funny, like, so I'm the oldest of 3 girls. My youngest sister is 6 years younger than me, so, like, my freshman and sophomore year, she was still in, like, middle school, and, when we drove up for my press conference, my sisters hadn't been back, right, in like, probably 6 to 10 years, and my youngest sister, we passed Harrison Roadhouse, right on the corner, and she was like, "I feel like I was raised in that Harrison Roadhouse," like, between Jenison Fieldhouse and
Yep.
the Kellogg Center Hotel and Harrison Roadhouse. It was like, memories for all of us, which is pretty cool.
I think it's really cool too that you lived in the same dorms, ate at the same dining halls. You probably stressed about similar exams in the same buildings as your players do now. How does that shared experience shape how you connect to your current athletes there?
I think it's pretty unique. Part of it is because, like, I love this place, right? And they don't they can trust that, and they really know that because I went here and I came back and I coached here, and so, when you go to a new school and you have to, like, really learn the traditions and learn what makes it unique, and you share the, like, okay, I'm a part of this school, but you didn't experience it the way they're experiencing it,
Mhm.
and so to be here and to be experiencing it the way they're experiencing it, or like 2 weekends ago, they do this student athlete tunnel for the first football game where, like, the student athletes get to go on the field and, like, the football team runs out, and I was like, "Guys, this was one of the coolest experiences I did as a student athlete," and most of our team hadn't done it, and they were like,
Mhm.
"Oh my gosh, cool, now we're so excited." They're like, "Kristen, you're right, that was amazing," like, those traditions and those things that they get to experience that I also experienced makes it's made the transition, I think, smoother, and our value of, like, loyalty and trust happen a lot faster because of those shared experiences, on top of that, and kind of like the other half of that coin is that I also recognize that a lot of their experience is different than mine.
Mhm.
There are different challenges and different expectations, and, while he was here at the same place, I don't pretend that my experience was the same, right? Or that our struggles
Mhm.
were the same, or, I wasn't here for the shooting or COVID, and so there's been
Yeah.
some real big experiences here on this campus that I recognize and own that I wasn't a part of, and I want to learn and listen and understand how it's shaped their experience as well.
That's super important because even for me, like COVID ended my senior spring semester a little bit early. So we were
Mm.
like going to nationals for club volleyball. It just changed everything. And I couldn't imagine still being in school at that time. Something else I wanted to ask you about is part of SheAce that is kind of talking about things that we don't always draw attention to with sports and like navigating the social dynamic of sports, whether that's clickiness, playing time comparison. At the level of competition for D1, being adults by the time you're going to college, like, do you still see girls kind of having to navigate the social dynamics of the sport?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're 18 to 22-year-olds, no
Mhm.
matter what, men or women, right? Is we are navigating some of the most formative years of their life that they're going to
Yeah.
grow as young people, right? You walk into college, leaving your parents' house and your parents' values and maybe your high school values or your friends' values. And now you're on your own for really the first time. And I think that's why, like, collegiate athletics, as much as we're going to this professional model and money, it's like that can never be taken away, right? Is that we are helping grow and challenge and change their lives in a period of their time that they really are doing a lot of soul searching, right? And a lot of figuring out who they are. And we talk a lot about our program values, right? Like, we have these 5 program values, and we say anybody who joins our program, staff, players, coaches, is going to commit to these program values. But I say, but I'm very clear in that these are not your personal values. They're not my personal values. And our job as your coaches is to help you evolve and find those personal values during year 4 or 5, Danny Courtly's 6th year in college, and so
Yeah.
that, we're constantly navigating conflict. We're constantly navigating expectations and stress management and how to be a great teammate and how to be a great daughter and sister and partner and student, right? And that can never be taken away from these years, no matter what collegiate athletics looks like.
No matter what level, it's always there. Is there one thing or a few things that you can think of that really build the team dynamic and kind of keep that locker room tight? Like when certain things happen, is there one thing that you default to?
Yeah. One of our values is courageous conflict. And this tries to recognize the courage it takes to engage in conflict, you know? And I always joke that we all have like a couple people in our life that were like, they enjoy conflict. I think for the most part is people hesitate to enter into conflict and they don't enjoy it. And so how do we, and yet we know that we're going to have conflict and address conflict in order to grow and to become a better volleyball team and to accomplish our mission and also to grow as people. So we try to honor that the courage it takes for me as your teammate to say, "Hey, Alexandra, you're being a little off today."
Mhm.
Right? And so instead of me like calling you out and like holding you accountable, I'm going to lead with curiosity and I'm going to have the courage to approach you probably one on one, not in front of the whole team and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Right? Like,
Yeah.
you're not being yourself, you're not living our values. How do we help? And then your job is whether you like it or not, your job is to acknowledge that it takes courage for me to care about you more than I care about not being in conflict and to respond appropriately in the fact of like, "Hey, I need help," or, "Hey, I'm
Mhm.
fine, thanks for reaching out," or, but it kind of puts your defenses down if instead
Mhm.
of you feeling attacked, we acknowledge the courage, and it helps me come to you with kindness that, like, you're my teammate and there's something going on that I need to help with,
Mhm.
and whether I need to get an adult or a coach involved, and that problems go up, right? We say problems don't go out. Like you
Mhm.
talking to your roommates about a problem with a teammate is eventually gonna get back to me, but it might not be for 4 weeks. But if you write to me and sit on my couch and share a frustration you're having, well, now I can help, right? And now, like, it takes a lot of courage for you to come into my office and tell me you're struggling with something, and it takes a lot of courage for me to tell you that you're not playing well enough to start, right? Like,
Mm.
it's not easy. So that's one of our values that we live every day in different ways. And it kind of takes the judgment or the cattiness out of it. And it acknowledges this is gonna happen. How we deal with it is really important with our team dynamic.
And that goes for off the court too, outside of sports, is leading with compassion versus jumping to conclusions. And it's like the
Yeah.
empathy aspect, like you said, breaking down barriers and walls versus raising them higher. So
I'm
I
letting that
appreciate you sharing that.
I'm writing that down. Leading with compassion instead of jumping to conclusions. I like that. We're adding that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing because I do think that's a hard dynamic no matter what level of sport you're in, right? It's like there's always these walls in the competition as athletes. We just have that instilled in us.
Like grace that like sometimes in the heat of the moment, like
Yeah.
it's gonna be what it is, like
Mhm.
in practice or in matches when we don't have time to like sit here and debrief. Like you might not like my tone or I might not
Mhm.
like your response, but we're united and that like we're gonna keep going forward. And then yeah, afterwards we're gonna chat and debrief. And but there is an amount of grace there too that like sometimes we don't have time to be tactful, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it just needs to happen now. But the loyalty and trust that we're building that like we're gonna circle back to that and
Mhm.
have the conflict, have the conversation afterwards to make sure we're both on the same page.
I love that. That's amazing coaching philosophy, and I feel like super impactful too. And it makes conflicts become a little bit shorter than long term, and you can handle
Yeah,
it in the moment.
exactly. Mhm.
Do you have any pregame superstitions or rituals, or have you noticed any of your players that have any and you just go with?
We try to like encourage them to keep a routine. So we have our game day. We try to structure it as similar as possible, whether we're on the road or at home. There's a big group of us that's like needs coffee. So like who's making we have a lot of like again, like routines. So like our serve
Mhm.
and pass like similar, like they know what to expect, instead of like you already have a little anxiety or a little, like playing a match and playing an opponent. So the more that we can keep their routine similar, knowing that like it's not gonna dictate everything, but it can help them have less surprises if they know a little bit of what practice is gonna look like, or they know a little bit. So I think me is just to show up consistent as possible, right? Where they're never wondering like, "What's my mood today?" It's like, yeah, like
Mhm.
we're all in this together, and my job is to show up consistently and authentically me, regardless of what happened last night and regardless of how I'm feeling, to help them make sure that their routines can be what they need it to be before the match.
And I feel like leading your coaching dynamics with genuineness makes a huge difference for how your team will accept you and also move forward and be a catalyst with you. And I feel like you are like a super genuine coach. Is there something that you fall back on for that, or is it just you always lead with, your true intentions and who you are?
It's a good question. I think trust is really important to me, and so I'll have my ebbs and flows of, like,
Mhm.
frustrations, and I've had a couple we were down 2-1 on Friday against App State, which is
Yeah.
why I don't have a voice this morning, um,
Fair.
and, I challenged them. I went in the locker room, and it was not pretty, but it wasn't disauthentic, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't like me against you guys. It was just a challenge of where we needed to be better and understanding that we have the depth to use, right? Like, and so always responded really well when I've challenged them. And I try in those moments to, even though like I'm hot or I'm frustrated, I can still be authentically me. And I don't want, I can still be in it with them, even though
Mhm.
I'm the one challenging them, and that I think trust that I'm building with them is really important in those moments because if I haven't built the trust, then they're not going to respond appropriately.
Mhm.
But I'm built and there's gonna be days that I have to like, it's like a bank account. There's a days I have to make a little bit of a withdrawal and tell them things they don't want to hear. But hopefully I'm depositing enough every day that that withdrawal is not from an empty account. And that withdrawal is not $100,000 withdrawal, right? It's $50 here, it's $10
Mhm.
here. It's hey, you need to be better here, but we're constantly like working on building the trust. And so I think that's really it is like being authentic does not mean being the same or being,
Mhm.
unemotional. It just means them trusting what to expect is still related to our values to them.
I like the bank account analogy because I feel like I've seen coaches on one side where they're only always depositing, and I've seen coaches on the other side where they're always taking. And I feel like the only successful times that I've really seen just the team chemistry thrive is when you're, like you said, maybe depositing a little bit more than taking, but it's in that middle area. It's not like one or the other. Is your starting lineup consistent or fluid? And what is your philosophy, behind that and playing time, especially at a collegiate level?
Yeah, it's been a challenge, I think, as a first-time head coach, right, of just navigating the position battles that we have because we still have quite a few, and one thing I keep telling them is, like, the depth of this roster is going to be a strength for us, right, and so you've seen us play 2 different rows, you've seen us have 3 opposites, our middles are still competing, and so, it's a reason, for our scheduling this preseason, I had 8 kids, Alexandra, I walked in August, I'd never seen play live. 8 of my
Wow.
18 players I'd never seen play live, and so I needed to make sure that I had time to play different lineups and to have these position battles in our preseason, or our preseason training, but then also in our non-conference matches, and so I think you see us fine-tuning, but we also had a number of athletes in a return to play protocol, so coming back from injuries, we had a couple surgeries in the spring, and so now as we integrate them into the lineup, right? How do you do that appropriately where they're trying to earn a spot? We've got athletes who've now played 8 matches, 7 matches. And so you see us kind of that's been a big point every day for our staff as we communicate how can we be as fair as possible, right? Earning that trust, but also keep the mission first, which is we're going to be a winning program. So we're not going to put that in front of the mission, but I think you can keep your mission first and give opportunities to other athletes. So it's been pretty fluid for us in some positions and in different matches,
Mhm.
and hopefully we'll continue to lock down our roles and the clarity of those roles heading into the Big Ten season.
Speaking of injuries in collegiate sports in general, are those athletes still expected to attend every practice, every game, like regardless of the injury? Is that a normal
Yeah,
expectation?
yeah, and a lot of it is just because, like, we're their support system. So they're at
Hmm.
practice, but maybe they're back, like, on the 3rd court and they're rehabbing or they're doing return to play or, we have an athlete who can jump and hit, but not against a block yet. So they're doing extra reps on that court while we're on this court, So, the only time you would see an athlete maybe not at a match is, like, a concussion because the noise and the lights or sometimes a surgery where, like, it doesn't help them to stand for 4 hours after they had knee surgery, you know? So
Mhm.
it's always what's best for the student athlete, but a lot of times the student athlete's best interest is to be present with the team, for their mental and emotional health, honestly, so they still feel a part of
Yeah.
it. But then also for their physical recovery is their, our athletic trainer and our strength coach are all with us. So let's keep you rehabbing and doing those things, even if you are not full go yet.
It's a good motivation factor, and support is huge, especially, with that pressure to wanna come back probably and return and play. As a setter, what are your top few pieces of advice to make sure you are a successful setter? Like, what do you see your role as a setter is?
Oh man, this could be a whole nother podcast by itself.
I know. I know.
I'm so passionate about it. Poor, not poor setters, but the setters on our roster. I tell my coach comments on practice and stuff, and I was like, I'm already on them so much for setting. Like, I don't want to give them blocking feedback. I don't want to give them defensive feedback or serving feedback because they're already hearing so much from me, right? Is like part of coaching is understanding they have a max amount of feedback from my voice as well, and they get the most probably. So, I talk about 3 things in setting. One, is just your skill, right? Like, can you set hittable balls over and over and over again, right? Like, that is the most like, I need a setter who can set. It doesn't matter if you're 6'4", if you can't set hittable balls, it doesn't matter, right? I don't care if you're 5'11", but you're the best locator in the gym. Okay, like, that was me. I was 5'9", like, I have a chip on my shoulder. So, you have to be able to be hittable as a setter, right? That's, like, most important. Second is I think in the recruiting especially is, like, how do you move? Like, how and I think that kinda goes into, like, being a great setter is, like, your footwork and your effort and your blocking and your movement and being an athlete and, like, it's kind of a sliding scale sometimes too, where, like, you can be a really good athlete, but not super hittable. Okay, well, like, this is, like, so important to me, but, like, are you really hittable, but you're smaller? Okay, what strengths do you bring, right? So, like, those are 2 kind of, flips of the coin, like, not flip, but 2,
Mhm.
what's the word I'm looking for? Panels kind of. And then,
Yeah.
what you always look for in a setter and what I coach our setters to every day is just how are they leading our offense, Because as a setter, I always joke with them, like, when we win the point, who does everybody look to? Right? When you
The
played
hitter.
volleyball, when you won the point, who do you look
Mhm.
at?
The hitter.
The hitter or the kid that got the ace or the
Yep.
kid who blocked the ball, right?
Yep.
Or like, that's who you turn to. Every time you lose the point, who do people look at? The setter, because you're going back to serve receive, right? So, like, we lose the point, no matter what happens, you go back to serve receive and everyone's watching what they're running. And so your body language and your communication is everything.
Mm.
After we lose a point, you're probably getting some feedback from coaches, and then everyone's eyes go to you and then the server. And so, how you communicate and the relationships you have in those moments, whether it was your fault or not, it doesn't matter. Everyone turns to you. And so, the biggest challenge for me is to get them to lead authentically to who they are. And that's
Mhm.
a lesson I really learned coaching Melanie Schaffmaster at Minnesota is like, I don't want you to be anybody else because then you're going to feel a sense of insecurity that you're not being true to who you are. I need you to be authentically you. And I have 3
Mhm.
setters right now with 3 very different personalities, but yet you have to be all of you. And I
Mhm.
need you to communicate in this, and this. How you communicate that should be authentic to who you are, right? Like Bergen Riley is a very different setter than Nicklin Haynes was, like
Yeah.
Melanie Schaffmaster is very different than Sam Swenson
Mhm.
was, right? That's okay. You can both be elite setters, but you have to be genuinely you. And there's non negotiables in the position in terms of communication that have to get done. And so that's my challenge to them is like, take away all of the tactical, technical, like technical, tactical, and leadership are like the 3 things, right? But like from a leadership perspective, there are non-negotiables, and then you figure out how you do it best in your natural style.
You're always navigating so much. You're the one leading the offense on the court. You're the one always running plays. You're the one seeing who's hot or where the blockers are headed, or you're trying to always get the feedback from the hitters, right? They're always like, oh, it's too short. It's too close to the net. It's too high. And there's so much to deal with. And I always remember, like, for me, at least with club volleyball at MSU, I always wanted to the first person I turned to celebrate my hit with was my setter. And I started as a setter. My freshman year in high school, we went undefeated on the freshman team with
Hey,
me all the
there
way
you go.
around. And I will take that as a win. And then after that, I was like, nope, you're a middle. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I figured I'd end up
Oh,
here. But
yeah.
so I do have that appreciation though, because I started there. And I feel like if I didn't have that, I wouldn't understand, as much that goes into it. You can be told it over and over, but there's such a higher volleyball IQ required.
Like technical, tactical, and then leadership. And so it's like the
Yep.
technical piece is like, are you hittable? Right. And
Hmm.
like, can you get your feet to the ball and can you move well? And then the tactical piece is like, can you run the offense? Can you know when to use an overload, when to use an isolate, when to use the back row? And
Hmm.
then the leadership piece. Right. And so like my advice for young setters is in those three buckets, like what do you do really well? Like for me, I was really good at like the leadership piece, right? And I was really good at the technicals. Like I could set a back set from anywhere, but I had to learn how to be more physical and I had to learn how to run a college offense and not predetermine who I was setting before I pass, right? And so
Yeah.
finding where your strength is and then where your weakness is in those three buckets, I think are the most important for young setters.
That's really helpful for recruiting and talking about recruiting going into college. Because I feel like back in my day, unless coaches were actively reaching out to you or you were being contacted effectively, like you didn't really realize that you were capable of playing at a college level, whether it was D1, D3, NAIA. And I feel like nowadays, it is easier to maybe capture video, collect video on like a social media platform or other recruiting platforms. Does having an athlete portfolio Instagram page actually help? Or what is your take on how social media has changed recruiting? And do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it does. I would say like you never have to pay for a recruiting service, right? Like you either have your club, your high school coach, or now in the
Mhm.
day of social media, like I get DMs all the time. We get emails. I think emailing is still the best way, right? Emailing your name, your age, your position, right? Your schedule and some video, right? And then I always say as a bonus, if you have a connection to the school, like, hey, my aunt played soccer at Michigan State. Awesome. Like if there's a connection to the school, that always makes me pause. But yeah, I mean, what's the first thing you do when you hear a name that you don't know? You like type it into Instagram, right? Or you like that is helpful, I think, for our recruiting coordinators because a lot of times I'll be like, "Hey, do you know about this kid?" And he'll literally pull up the Instagram and we can watch the video and then there's usually a link to the huddle on their Instagram. And so, do I think it's necessary? No, but do I think, like in this digital age, it's helpful for sure.
For high schoolers starting to record themselves for recruiting videos, what are the things that you are looking for?
I can't speak like specific to Michigan State, in
Yeah.
terms of recruiting, but I just think as a former club coach, right? Like what I would tell athletes is just to make sure it's your best. It's the best thing you do the most. So if I'm a middle, I don't really need to see you set out of system balls as much as I need to see you block and hit. And as a setter, you probably have the most, but as an attacker,
Mhm.
can you pass? Can you kill balls? And can you block? Right. So, like, sometimes we get like Libro videos and they're like, it's like 10 pancakes. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really cool. But like, can you pass? Can you serve? So I think
That's
just in
funny.
terms of like that is making sure it's highlighting your best skills most often that you'll need in that position.
You
Yeah.
have been under some incredible coaches, and what have you taken from being an assistant coach that you said, I'm definitely doing this if I or when I am a head coach?
Yeah, I'm so lucky, right? I played for like most people don't know this part, but I played for like a super strong, independent, like fierce coach in high school. Like woman who won 16 state championships, was tough on us, like really started that chapter for me and how to be a strong female role model. And then I get to go to Kathy George, right, who I got to play for and coach with. And then I got to go and leave and go to a totally different experience, right? A super high academic school, still in the Big Ten, with Shane Davis, who was a two-time national championship men's coach, where I learned this like whole other side of the game, right? I learned
Mhm.
different blocking systems. I learned offensive styles. Like it was just an awesome counter to the 9 years I had of one coach and one style. Um, then a year of club volleyball where it really changed my life and how I saw a lot of different things, but a lot of the recruiting piece being on that side of it and seeing the impact on these kids and these families and really being passionate about teaching the game in the youth level and like what are we teaching to prepare them for the collegiate level. Um, And then 2 years at Minnesota where, to be at the very top tier of women's volleyball at a school like Minnesota who supports, the school so well, who loves the program so well, to work with Keegan Cook, who I think is one of the brightest minds, but also the most integrity out there that you can do this the right way at the highest level. I mean, I'm a mesh of all the coaches I've worked for, especially in the way that I teach and I train. And yet I still think the way that I coach is still authentic to me. And I think that's what I've done well is being able to take these different teaching and training styles and scouting styles and recruiting from everywhere I've been. And now how does that look for me as head coach? And when I was choosing our values in January when I'm sitting in this office. There was nothing up yet, no assistants, no staff. I'm alone here sitting in the cold. And I said, like, no matter who comes in and out of this program over the next X amount of years, what do I want Michigan State volleyball to be known for? And am I passionate about? And that's how I chose our values. And that's how I chose our mission because it was like, no matter who comes and goes, if in 10, 15, 20 years I look back and say, hey, we did these things, that's authentic to me and how I want a program to run, I'm going to feel pretty good about that.
I really appreciate that. What's been the most mentally challenging part of being a head coach that maybe people don't see from the outside?
I think just managing people,
Yeah.
like as an assistant, I feel like I was always that assistant who was helpful and like, kind of leading the assistants and making sure everything was ready for the head coach or like
Mhm.
understanding body language or helping with player personnel. Like I was very involved and had a lot of autonomy. But it's different. Like sitting on this side of the desk, your words matter so much to your assistants, to your staff, to your players, how you communicate who's starting, how you communicate what the goals and the expectations are. Um, and what a privilege it is, right? Like the depth of the relationships I can have with our athletes as the head coach are so much deeper, right? Um, but at the same time, it is a lot of people to manage, right?
Mhm.
18 players, a staff of 7, not including our support staff and everyone else. So that is what I think I take a lot of pride in, but it's also emotionally at times
Mhm.
a lot, right? Trying to make sure you're doing right as often as possible and yet making sure you keep the most important things, right? Like, how do I keep our players' experience and health the priority? When I say health, that's emotionally, mentally, and physically, right? It's all of that. And
Mhm.
then how can I also do right by all of the people who are supporting us and so excited about this start and helping to do everything they can from marketing and facilities and our tech coordinator and our Dovo, right? Like I have to remind myself sometimes I can't do it all, even though I want to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. And that's the thing is too, is like how do you prevent burnout from yourself or, from your athletes and while still maintaining, the competitiveness and everything you're juggling? Is there any key things you do?
Yeah, I think, I'm a big proponent of mental health. My dad is a psychologist, and so I have my own, therapist that is such a good reminder of me to recover, right? Like, like, as much as I tell our athletes, "You have to recover, you have to sleep and ice bath," like, I have to do that, and sometimes
Mhm.
that looks like going for a run or working out. Sometimes that looks like just having some time to recharge my battery and not taking a phone call or, like, giving myself an afternoon to just go for a walk and just, you know I'm an introvert at heart, so I need that, like, period of nobody talked to me for like 3 hours,
Yeah, I get
um,
that.
which is hard to do, but
Mhm.
finding, I found that in the mornings, like I'll get up early and I'll have my coffee and I'll do my devotional and I'll do some laundry and just have that morning peace and quiet. And then I get in the office and it's go time. And I can always tell that the mornings that I've had that time to start my day recharging that battery versus, and sometimes that looks like a workout and sometimes it looks like, coffee in bed. It depends.
Mhm.
Um, but the days that I do that, I'm better for all of the people that I'm trying to be best for.
Yeah, we can't fill other people's buckets if ours are empty, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
you've accomplished so much, like from as a player, team captain, Sweet 16, Elite Eight as an assistant, now you're head coach of your own program. Do you feel like you've made it, or what is like your next goal on your list?
You know, I never even knew if I wanted to be a head coach. Like, to be honest, I wasn't an assistant who was like, I need to be a head coach as fast as possible. And if you walked with me through the last 10 years of my life, you would see that in the decisions I made, right? The decisions to stay at Michigan State, to go to Northwestern, to leave college coaching for a year, to chase some personal goals, to being back at Minnesota, to finally being here at Michigan State. And so for me, it's less about a goal and it's more about the alignment in my life. And every decision I've made professionally over the last 10 years has also aligned with my personal values and what those look like at the time. And so I have no regrets in terms of the roads that led me back here and how I got here. I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about, life and love and this profession and just different lessons that I know I will use not only as head coach here, but in the next chapters of my life. So for me, it's just to be as present as possible in this chapter, right? And that, as my mentor Keegan Cook would say, that the story will write itself.
Hmm. That's so true. Thank you for sharing that. And I know we're going to be closing up in a minute, so I just have two last questions for you.
Yeah.
What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Not just for MSU volleyball, but for, all of the people that you coach, all the athletes and your staff.
Hmm. I have so many like cliches running through my head. At the end of the day, I want any athlete that I coached to know how much I loved them, right? And that care at the root of it will never leave, right? And so sometimes love looks like, there's a quote that I love that it says, truth without love is harsh, but love without truth is hollow. And so truth without love. So telling them no, right? That this isn't good enough, or this is not acceptable, or that they're better than this, or this wasn't a good life choice, like telling them no without them knowing how much I care about them is really harsh, right? But I can't just love them, right? And tell them they're the best and they're going to win every match they play and that they can't do anything wrong because love without truth is hollow. And I hope the legacy I leave is that I've walked that line of loving them and also being truthful to them in their life, in their volleyball career, is that I challenged them and I grew them to be better young women as well as better volleyball player. And that I had the courage to be honest with them while also never having them doubt that it came from a place of love.
I love that. That was amazing. Thank you. And
Yeah.
last question for you. What would current Coach Kelsay tell the freshman setter who walked into Jenison Fieldhouse in 2010?
I get emotional thinking about this.
I know. It's okay.
No, it's great. It's great. Mm. Would if I could, like, sit across from, 18, 17-year-old Kristen, I would say it's just starting, and to stay present, stay gracious, right? And to stay in the fight. And it's gonna look at times like the road is leading to nowhere, right? Or you're gonna feel like you're in the valley, but just stay in the fight and just keep going because it all works out. And you're beginning this chapter, right, of your life that will lead you back to the most incredible experience. So enjoy it, right? Make sure every day you find the good and you stay gracious with gratitude, and just keep going.
I think I needed to hear that myself, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you wanna add for today?
I don't think so. You asked some really good questions. Great job. That was awesome.
Thank
For
you.
sure.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. I
Sometimes you
it
do
was
these and they're like interviewer, but this was more like conversation, which I appreciate. So,
That's my goal with all of this. I'm just trying to help players, parents, and coaches, and just try to create a safe space and community. And hopefully, one day can help kids who maybe can't afford like pay to play or gear.
yeah.
And I just have a bigger goal for this. I'm trying to be patient because I have a 17-month-old and things like that. But
Oh,
so I don't have time to coach, and I just love it. And I'll make my way back. But this is my way to kind of coach virtually for now. So I
awesome.
appreciate you being a
Well,
part of it.
yeah, anything you need, thank you for helping inspire the youth, and creating strong young women. That's what we're trying to do. So, thanks for having me on. This was awesome.
Thank you so much, Coach Kelsay, for joining She Aced That this week. And thank you, everybody, for listening in. And we'll see you next Wednesday.